Ron Hartfield said, "The experience of African peoples in America is inherently and profoundly characterized by the act of looking backward. If we do not look back, we cannot know who we are. The non-volitional journey from Africa, the dreaded Middle Passage, the tearing apart of families, language systems, and ritual practices rooted in communal consensus, the severing of mothers from infants, brides from bridegrooms, all have contributed to Black America's obsessive concern with its past. It is in the seeking of both African American writers and artists and establishing of connections between both of these streams that the nexus of much of African American art resides." W.E.B. Du Bois described the double consciousness, the two-ness of the Black experience. He described it as two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body. Welcome to Tone Deaf, a theater nerd's guide for their musically challenged spouse. In this special edition, we will be covering history of theater through the Black experience. Welcome to Tone Deaf, a theater nerd's guide for their musically challenged spouse. I'm Kay, a musical theater nerd.
And I'm Warren. I'm musically challenged.
We are so glad to be back in your feeds on the regular. Well, for this month, it's going to be more than regular, because it's Black History Month.
And since it's the shortest month of the year, you're getting a double dose of Kay and Warren.
It might end up being triple, seeing how this rolls out. Because there is a lot that we're going to be covering, because I want to try to get us to the 1930s. We have 28 days to do it.
Well, pitter-patter, Kay.
So, we're going to be covering Black theater, and it has a super rich history that can't be covered with just one weekly episode, or even really a month. So, like I said, we may be able to get to the 30s this year. It may be next year that we get to the 30s. That's how...
There will be other Black History months.
And so if you're not into finding out about Black History Month, sorry, that's what every February is going to be from now on. If you are, awesome. We're glad to have you this month. This will be a little bit different as well, because we are changing our rating just for the month of February, so Warren is going to be on his best behavior.
Yep.
So...
You should have seen the look Kay gave me.
Yep. So I'm going to do this in mostly chronological order just so that I can stay organized, because there's a lot, and I went down a lot of rabbit holes with this.
And personally, I really like chronological order.
Good.
Because that's the way my brain tries to work.
Awesome. So this is like the one time that I'm going to be sticking with chronological order with theater. So today, I'm just going to start off with a very, very basic history of pre-African diaspora, mostly focusing on one specific group of people, the Yoruba people.
Okay.
So diaspora would be the term for being forced from your homeland, basically. Oh. So the African diaspora would be Africans being taken from Africa and sold into slavery or being refugees. Like, this would be, I guess, the first African diaspora.
So just diaspora just means being forced to leave your home.
Yes. And lots of cultures have had a diaspora. This is just the African one that we're going to focus on. In future years, I'm going to be starting the month with a focus on a different group's form of performance. So like I said, this year we're doing the Yoruba. Next year, I kind of want to do the Don people, so on and so forth. So, we'll also do a little bit of a catch-up at the start of the year, so that everyone knows what we covered the last year if you don't want to re-listen to episodes. So, another thing, this will not be musicals only, because I said so.
And you are K.
And I am K.
Your word is law.
My word is law. It's one of the only times it can be law. So, a lot of black theater will be straight plays, and a lot of them, there are not versions that you can see on YouTube. However, I will be providing links to our sources as well as a list of the books that we are using, and 2 of the books have full plays in them, which is what I will be reading to Warren so that he can react to them later. So that's how these episodes are going to go for everyone listening. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So African theater is a bit different and a lot harder to track down in some of the research material that is out there for a lot of complex reasons. First, the obvious, colonialism, which we could go on a whole tangent about, but I can already see the rant forming behind Warren's eyes.
The white-hot, searing rant of rage, yes.
Yes, so we won't be focusing... We won't go completely into that. Another thing is that theater is different with regards to what you would consider theater in the roots in Africa compared to European theater. So performance is woven into so much of the cultures in Africa through different rituals. Not all rituals are the same. I'm actually going to show you a few videos of some Yoruban ceremonies, and we'll get into them in a little bit, but basically just know that Africa's not a monolith. It's many cultures, many countries. Africa's just the continent that these countries all are on, and all these different cultures are on. There's also different biomes, there's different peoples, there's different things that needed to be done because you're going to live a different way in the desert than you would in the savannah, than you would in a temperate climate, etc., etc.
Well, and I remember learning when I was in high school, I had a teacher in a world civilizations class who was talking about how diverse Africa was prior to colonialization or colonization. And that teacher had shown us a great example of so much diversity and was stating that from the north of Africa down to the south, there was more diversity found in Africa among humankind than there was in any other continent on the planet, because so many of these other cultures and different continents, while they are different, there is a lot that is also the same.
Yes.
Well, and the same can be said for Africa, that diversity is so expansive because there's so many different groups of people in Africa. It's not just, they're all Africans, but they're not the same.
Yeah, you've got the Yoruban people, you have the Don, you have Bantu-speaking peoples, you have just so many groups that...
And many that are lost to time.
Yeah, many that are lost to time, and that's a big issue with trying to figure out what happened prior to colonialism, because there's a lot of oral tradition. So, Babatunde Lawal talks about in his essay the African heritage of African American art in the book Black Theater, Ritual Performance in the African Diaspora, which is also the main source for this episode. He basically talks about all of the cross cultures that exist. And so the one that we're going to focus on, that's one of the groups he talks about, is the Yoruba. And we're also going to talk about some of the similarities to just performance art in general. So outside of watching what's been passed down from cultures that still retain their identity post-colonialism, it's really hard to tell what the performances were. Because if they weren't passed down, they just disappeared. It's kind of like playing a game of telephone.
Yeah.
When you've got oral traditions, because they change so much generation to generation. Again, we could do a whole podcast on the horrors of colonialism, but I'm going to leave that to other shows like Pomegranates and Pitchforks.
Who do a great job.
Great job, and BTB. I'm not going to say the actual name since this is a little bit more accessible to all audiences. So, a really good essay from the book that I was talking about is by J.C. DeGroft. In his essay, The Roots of African Drama and Theater, he talks about the fact that as an artistic expression, drama would be the truest representation of real life, and he emphasizes the aspects that would bring African rituals into the umbrella of drama. So basically, like, whatever drama is supposed to represent what is going on in real life, and nothing will really show that more than seeing it live in front of you. So you could have a painting of, let's see, what's a good example? You could have a painting that kind of tells you a little bit about the stuff that we saw in Oklahoma. But then if you see Oklahoma, then you go, oh, that's pretty representational of how it was growing up in the Oklahoma Territory. That sort of stuff. That's the same thing with ritual drama. Ritual drama is a representation, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The first thing that he talks about is this passage from a book called The Magic Island by W.B. Seabrook about Haiti. Now, I'm going to preface, this book was published in 1929, which, leads to a little bit of problematicness, but the part that JC highlights is about a voodoo substitution sacrifice that's used to preserve the custom of human sacrifice for Dambala Owedo without actually sacrificing a human. And the subject who is being sacrificed will undergo a trance and switch bodies with a goat. So I'm going to read this passage for you so that you've got an idea of how this happens. The ceremony of substitution, when it came, was pure, effective magic of a potency which I have never seen equaled in dervish monastery or anywhere. The goat and the girl, side by side before the altar, had been startled, restive, nervous. The smell of blood was in the air, but there was more than just that hovering. It was the eternal, mysterious odor of death itself, which both animals and human beings always sense, but not through the nostrils. Yet, now, the two who were about to die mysteriously merged. The girl symbolically, and the goat with a knife in its throat, were docile and entranced, were like automatons. The girl was now on her hands and knees, in the attitude of a quadruped, directly facing the goat, so that their heads and eyes were on a level less than 10 inches apart, and thus they stared fixedly into each other's eyes. By shifting slightly, I could see the big, wide, pale blue staring eyes of the goat and the big, black staring eyes of the girl. And I could have almost sworn that the black eyes were gradually, mysteriously becoming those of a dumb beast, while the human soul was beginning to peer out through the blue. But dismiss that, and still I tell you that pure magic was here at work, that something very real and very fearful was occurring. For as the priest wove his ceaseless incantations, the girl began a low, piteous bleating, in which there was nothing, absolutely nothing human. And soon a thing more unnatural occurred. The goat was moaning and crying like a human child. While the papaloi still wove his spells, his hands moving ceaselessly like an old woman carding wool in a dream, the priestess held a twig green with tender leaves between the young girl and the animal, on level with their mouths, against the hairy muzzle of the goat, against the chin and soft lips of the girl, and after moments of breathless watching, it was the girl's lips that pursed out and began to nibble at the leaves, nibbling as horned cattle do. As she nibbled thus, the Papaloi said, in a hushed but wholly matter-of-fact like a man who had finished a hard, solemn task and was glad to rest, "Ka est. There it is." The Papaloi was now holding a machete, ground, sharp, and shining. Neither seemed conscious of anything that was occurring, nor did the goat flinch when the Papaloi laid his hands upon its horns. Nor did the goat utter any sound as the knife was drawn quickly, deeply, across its throat. But at this instant, as the blood gushed like a fountain into the wooden bowl, the girl, with a shrill, piercing, and then strangled bleat of agony, leaped, shuddered, and fell senseless before the altar.
That's wild.
Yep. And again, the goat died, not the girl, and the priest was able to bring the girl back afterwards. But that was the substitution ceremony.
That is a crazy trance.
Yes.
I was closing my eyes as you were reading because I was visualizing it.
Yeah, it's wild, huh? So that is an example of impersonation, which would be present in many rituals around the world, including in Africa. And, as de Graaf argues, it is the central fact of live drama. In his essay, he talks about the rituals as magic drama, separated from other types with how the impersonator impersonates. So in secular drama, you are consciously aware that you're impersonating someone or something. In this, it was possession, so not the same. But still, there's a little bit of that shred there. So now I'm going to read you this other line that struck me of his in this same essay. And again, these are in the Black Theater Ritual Performance in the African Diaspora book that I highly recommend. De Graaf says, "The actor who understands his art knows that he must try to strike a fine balance between his awareness of the fictional world of the character impersonated and his awareness of the workaday world his audience and his artistic self has. He knows that no matter how deeply he immerses himself in the role of the fictional character, there is always a psychological point of safety beyond which he dare not go, lest he be swept out of his depth and get carried away on the uncertain currents of hysteria and ecstasy. In simple theatrical terms, this means that the actor loses control of himself, and, with that loss of control, his grip on the role and on his audience, if it is an artistically sensitive audience. It also means that acting is at its most electrifying when it dares to go as close as possible to the psychological safety point, the farthest limit within control, the brink of possession." So, he does go on to say that there's going to be a middle ground between your dramatic art and your magic drama. And this is where two of my favorite African rituals, which are the ones that we're going to watch today, fall in. They are the Egungun and Gelede masquerade dramas. And these are for the Yoruba people. So first we're going to go a little bit into the background of Egungun. Egungun is the cult of the Yoruban people that's centered around ancestor worship. Now, it's not a cult in the sense of like Jonestown or Heaven's Gate. This would be more the sense of religious practices that center around something, somewhere, someone. Basically, the bare bones of religion without all of the dogma. So that's what we're talking about with cult. So, with Egungun, you would have men wear masks that were meant to be an ancestor. They're symbolic, they're not literal, so they don't look like anybody. They're just these big masks, basically. And You'll see these masks in the videos that I show you later, but it's kind of like some of them will be a lot of layers of cloth that are hanging down. Some of them will have raffia, but it's always worn by men. Women never wear the masks. And we'll go into that in a minute, but women do make the masks, and they do participate in the Egungun ceremony. They just don't actually do the dance.
Interesting.
So, to start off, I'm going to read you a passage from Things Fall Apart, which is by Chinua Achebe, and I think everyone should read this book anyway, where they talk about an Egungun performance that the main character, Okonkwo, partakes in. And then the Egungun appeared. The women and children sent up a great shout and took to their heels. It was instinctive. A woman fled as soon as an Egungun came into sight. And when, as on that day, 9 of the great masked spirits in the clan came together, it was a terrifying spectacle. Each of the 9 Egungun represented a village of the clan. Their leader was called Evil Forest. Smoke poured out of his head. Okonkwo's wives, and perhaps other women as well, might have noticed that the second Egungun had the springy walk of Okonkwo, and they might have noticed that Okonkwo was not among the titled men and elders who sat behind the row of Egungun. The Egungun with the springy walk was one of the dead fathers of the clan. He looked terrible, with the smoked raffia body, a huge wooden face painted white except for the round, hollowed eyes, and the charred teeth that were as big as a man's fingers. On his head were 2 powerful horns. So you notice that there's a little bit of a difference there between the substitution ritual and this.
One has a lot more flair, I guess, to it, because it's more theatrical and less ritualistic, I guess, at least in the way that I think of ritualistic, which is kind of tinged with a kind of Greek filter.
Big difference, one was conscious, one was not.
Oh.
The girl was not consciously acting like a goat, she was being possessed. Okonkwo is consciously performing his role as the Egungun. Or in other circles, it would be the Egungun. So.
Slight tangent, if that's okay.
Yes.
Do they, in your research, does it say how they're able to get the girl to go into this trance?
Nope.
Okay.
I've done trance work before, and it can be kind of wild.
Yeah, and because I wasn't sure if it was something to do with, like a deep meditation to kind of put someone into a trance-like state where they are susceptible to that environment, or if it was
might be.
I wasn't sure if it was, or if it was like the oracles of Delphi, where they just make them inhale chemicals, or not just chemicals.
I see where the question is with that, but I did not see how that happens with that.
Okay.
But basically, in a way, the difference in the impersonation there was the acting. I mean, this is bare bones acting, what Okonkwo was doing, but it's still acting. So, according to another essay by Uli Bayer, referenced by de Graft, on occasion, there are stories acted out with these dramas. And he talks about one that I really like that I'll read out. So, in some groups, little stories are enacted. The Shango worshipper begins his display, is interrupted by policemen, and finally bribes his way out of trouble. The harlot often does a kind of striptease act, displaying long cloth breasts and embroidered pubic hair, and she may frequently do a mock copulation with the policeman or some other character.
Oh!
Because the Egungun or the Egungun are dead ancestors, or rather representations of these archetypes. They're not a specific person. So, and this is where you kind of are having little skits in these rituals. It's not just, they're dancing to they're dancing to represent something, but they're dancing to represent a a story in some of these instances. So we're seeing sort of the foundations being laid for theater now. We'll talk about the Gelede next. So according to both de Graft and Baer, they are for the placation of witches.
So what does that mean?
So this would be... So witchcraft is a little bit different there than what the rest of the Western world would consider witchcraft. Witchcraft in a lot of West African culture is subconscious or unconscious. You are not in control of what you're doing. So it's different from sorcery, where sorcery, you have control.
It's based on intent.
Yeah, sorcery is based on intent. Witchcraft is unconscious.
So when you say the placating of witches, so is it encouraging? Is it like...
It's saying, hey, don't, when you're having your unconscious search for causing whatever issues, don't go to my group. Don't go to my town. Go somewhere else.
Witches aren't welcome.
Yeah, basically. It also will be there to honor women in general, both deities and otherwise, because in this culture, women are extremely powerful spiritually. And this is also kind of tied into why women don't wear the masks of the Egungun or of the Gelede.
But they make them.
And
I like that dynamic there, that they're not wearing them, but they are so tied and so powerful spiritually that they are crafting the spiritual item that is then being used.
Yes, and I could do a deep dive later on all of the reasoning behind why women don't have certain parts in the rituals, but in other parts they do, because basically women, just by being women, are more powerful, and that power is kind of scary to some, but we're not a witchcraft podcast. So that's going to be pomegranates and pitchforks territory if they cover witchcraft, or whichever path territory if they hop into that. I will let them go onto the witchcraft tangent so that I don't.
Fair enough.
That was one of my favorite classes, though, learning about witchcraft in college when I was doing my cultural anthropology stuff. So it's fun. So another thing about Gelede is that she was one of the children of Yamoja, who is the Orisha of pregnant women and rivers, and is often called the mother of all Orisha. And the Orisha would be your Yoruban deities. So Yamoja couldn't have children, and she went to the Ifa oracle, who told her, all right, here's what you do. You're gonna dance with this wooden image on your head. I want you to put metal anklets on your feet, and then you're gonna have kids. And, oh, you need to also perform a sacrifice. So she does that, and she has 2 children. She has Gelede and Efe. And those children found partners, and then couldn't have kids either. So they go to the same oracle, and he tells them, okay, do this ritual, put a wooden image on your head, dance with your anklets, make a sacrifice, and that succeeded, and so the Gelede rituals were born out of that. The date for the annual ritual is set through divination, and then the Efe dance can be performed on the night of the ritual, so that's the son's dance. Then the next day is Gelede, the daughter's dance. And so now I'll read you Baer's description, because when we watch both of these, only one of the ones that I could find had subtitles.
That's okay. That's okay.
All right, so Baer describes with the Gelede performances, the ritual dance always takes place at night. It is preceded by a sacrifice and accompanied by praise songs and a prayer. It culminates in the appearance of Efe, a powerful mask, preceded by a young girl who carries a witch in the form of a bird in a calabash. And then he talks about the fact that there is an entertainment value with this, because he says, from the theatrical point of view, The dance that usually follows the next afternoon is more interesting. For the avowed purpose of this dance is to provide entertainment to the witches and keep them in good temper, and of course, at the same time, entertain the townspeople at large who had been excluded from the night ceremony.
So sorry, there was a line in there that piqued my brain when you said keep the witches in good humor.
Yes.
Do you know if it was a common belief that the witches' powers or abilities only manifested when they were like under emotional distress, so by being happy they were
if I remember right, that's the case.
Because just the context of that line made me think that.
No, that's a very fair question. I remember one of the things that the teacher that told me about the witchcraft rituals is that it's a stomach-related thing. So, like, stomach upset is a sign that, oh, you're performing witchcraft somewhere on someone. We don't know who, but...
You're a powerful witch, then.
I know. My IBS means I'm super powerful. No. Like I said, I really was tempted to do this big old deep dive, and then I was just like, I can't do this to you. I can't do this to him.
Oh, sure you can.
I probably would. So like I said, women don't perform this. They don't perform the Gelede dance, but they do make the headdresses and they do tell the stories, and that's their role in it. They don't get to dance. And another thing I forgot to tell you with Egungun is that you do not touch the Egungun, because that would court death.
And that's the mask.
That's the giant masks. We'll see the differences between the two when we watch the videos. So, one thing that de Graaf brings up is a list of things that make it possible for true dramatic art to flourish. I'll read you his conditions. 1. A worldview which predisposes the people to ritual practices requiring a strong element of role-playing. Check. 2. An inclination for narrative expression based on that community's own history and legends, myth, and folklore. There's a check. 3. A strong feeling for social solidarity in which the emergence of an embryonic form of drama from the interaction of conditions 1 and 2 above fosters the resultant form of art not only as an expression of the community's ethos, but perhaps more important, as a means of further strengthening its sense of cohesion and identity. Another check.
So, telling stories to bring the community together and make it stronger through reinforcing their history.
Yes. And here we come to number 4. A system of notation through which the most successful dramatic creations are communicated to wider audiences, and, what is more, conserved and kept in sure memory for future generations. Not a check. And last, and this one's going to make you mad, freedom or protection from such traumatic historical experiences as ruthless religious, political, and economic domination by aliens.
And I mean me and my ilk.
So, yeah, they're two things that...
No check.
No check. This ritual would be considered folk art because it's oral tradition. Folk art is not generally written down. It's also why you get some of the folk songs that are like 50 verses long because a verse gets added on every year and stuff. Like Alice's Friggin' Restaurant, that's a 60-minute song now. Not Alice's Friggin' Restaurant, it's just called Alice's Restaurant, but the fact that it's 60 minutes long now...
Warrants the friggin'.
It warrants the friggin'. So, you get your game of telephone, because things are evolving, and so on and so forth, and that's, the case for human history, but Sub-Saharan Africa got ravaged by colonialism, which kind of makes it hard to keep your dramatic expression alive. It's a miracle that any of this survived.
Especially since part of the colonialism tactic was to squash any and all cultural relevant storytelling.
Yeah, and I mean, this was 500 years of people on the continent just having their religions destroyed, their cultures torn apart, families separated, people enslaved and murdered, and not just, like, taken away enslaved, but enslaved on the continent. There are some stories about King Leopold that older audiences, y'all can listen to on BTB. Kids definitely shouldn't. Not yet.
Agreed.
Don't have that destroyed for you yet. But other places have also covered what King Leopold of Belgium did. And a lot of the colonialism led to cultural practices and religions being banned because European Christianity does not allow for other cultures to exist. Because you're just told that, no,
it's pagan.
Yeah, this culture's pagan, this culture's wrong, get rid of it. So, now, after that happy note, I'm so sorry, we'll go take a look at some videos of Egungun and Gelede masquerade dramas, and we can talk a little bit about it before we move on to our next episodes. This episode will be a little bit shorter because of the lack of material, and then next episode will be also a tiny bit shorter because episode 3 will be your first 1K production.
1K?
Because I will be performing all the roles for you.
Oh.
Because I have to read it out of a book because no one has performed this show in a long time.
I look forward.
Alright, so let's go take a brief intermission and watch some Egungun and Gelede, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Yay!
Hey Warren,
Hey Kay,
do you know what time it is?
is it time to thank our most favorite people in the whole world?
Heck yeah! Today, we would like to send a big thank you to our stage crew sponsor, Jasmine Wu.
And our producer circle sponsors, Bianucci and Reagan.
Thank you all so much for all of your help in supporting our show.
We truly appreciate it.
Today, I want to promote a great Black podcast, The Class Prefects. This is a conversational podcast between two Nigerian friends, later joined by a Ghanaian friend, as they talk about many topics, including politics, religion, pop culture, race, and many other things. I was binging this show all week, and I absolutely love it. A heads up for our younger audience, this show is rated explicit. The Class Prefects has been running since January of 2016, and will be posting new episodes soon. Definitely check them out on Spotify, iTunes, and other major podcatchers. And now, the lights are going down and the music's starting back up, so let's head back to the second act of our show. Okay, so what'd you think of the Egungun and Gelede?
It was wild. I don't know what I was expecting. It was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting. One of the things that I thought was surprising was how colorful the costumes and everything was. Like, I don't know why I was picturing it to be, because it was talking about, stuff of sacrifice and stuff like that, so I think I was picturing something grittier or darker looking, but it was very, like, there was no somberness about it. It was very, like, upbeat, high energy, very excited.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about it, is just how energizing it is, and it makes you kind of go, I want to go there. I want to be there for these ceremonies.
The decapitated goat was...
Yeah,
so... I wasn't expecting that.
For anyone watching any of the videos, the 24-minute one that's a documentary does have the goat sacrifice. It's not the one that I described earlier, but they have the sacrifice that occurs before the masquerade can begin, and it's graphic.
It is graphic,
but
yes,
that is the only graphic thing that happens in it. So, and it's towards the end, so you can watch up to the point when he's doing the divination and then pouring the libations. And once you see him start to pour the libations, it's right after he starts taking the cola nuts out that's when the goat happens. So
I mean, definitely a gore warning for it, but yes. I think that it is important to watch for the context of what's going on.
Yeah.
And, I mean, animal sacrifice is nothing new. That's been done for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And it's not like the animal goes to waste either.
Yeah, if this was a cultural anthropology podcast, I would go into the purposes of why you would do an animal sacrifice at certain times of the year and stuff like that, because that's not only in African cultures, it's in almost every culture, but we are not an anthropology podcast, so
I will get us back on track.
No worries, babe. So, what did you think with the one documentary that we watched, the 24-minute one with the two elders?
It was interesting. I thought the discussion about the origins of the cloth used in the costumes, how it was about using these pieces of cloth to carry the bones of the progenitor, of the father of the children in the story that we're talking about. They go to the oracle asking what they need to do, and the oracle says, hey, go to this location, and they find the bones of their father, and the oracle says, use cloth to carry them, and that's why the costumes have all these different colored cloths that don't, you look at them and you're kind of like, it kind of reminds me of a quilt that has like different patches, different colors, but then it really goes together. And in one of the other videos, it was talking about the symbolism with the cloth that was beyond the context of the story that the one elder was talking about. It was saying that the different pieces of cloth represent the different people of the community, and how even though they're all different, they all come together and they're all part of the same community. And I really liked how invested they were in being like, this is all us, we are all this, and it was very uplifting.
Yeah. And even like the thing that I loved too was the oldest man talking about how everybody comes in, not just the people who still practice the traditional religion, but also the Christians and the Muslims come in, because this is our heritage. We do this. So it's even in the face of people who would, even in the face of the other religions that come in that would kind of, well, Christianity more so clashing rather than Islam clashing with the traditional beliefs, but it definitely is great to see that even then they're just, no, this is what we do, and we're going to do this. We do this every year.
And because it's a honoring of your heritage, honoring of the ancestors of where you came from, because it's like you may practice a certain faith, but it's more of honoring the ways of those who came before.
Yes.
And I don't think that there should be too much conflict of celebrating both.
Exactly.
And it was really interesting to watch, because correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure if I was understanding completely the older elder. I want to be snarky and call him One Tooth, or Snaggletooth, but it sounded like he was saying he was the main elder, and all the other elders, like, because he was, at one point he was talking about that if he didn't participate, the ceremony would not have the same significance because he's the eldest elder. So his costume is the most important, is kind of what he was talking about.
Yes.
And it almost kind of seemed like there was a slight rivalry between the other elders. So I don't know what the social power dynamic is, as like if when that eldest elder were to pass on, if one of the other elders would kind of move in to take that spot as the alpha elder, so to speak.
I'm not sure, because it's different from each community too.
Yeah, so, I mean, who knows? Who knows how it's decided? But it did seem interesting how, like, it's all in good spirit, but it almost seemed like they were trying to kind of like one up each other with who is representing the elders the best, and who has, you know, the most gumption in their dance and their ceremonies, and of course, like, the costumes they're wearing look like heavy, and they're multi-layered.
Yes.
And these folks are in Africa, so like you pointed out at one point, one of the people in the costumes, they kind of ducked away into a corner, and there were like 6 people fanning him.
Yep.
Just to help him cool down a little bit. And it was wild to watch.
Yeah, and what's great to watch with these two as well, because we watched a few documentaries that were more recent, and then a few things that were older.
The oldest one I think we saw, at least that had a date, said it was 1995.
There was for the Egungun, the oldest was 95, and for the Gelede, the oldest was 1960.
Oh.
That was the UNESCO one, I believe, that was 1960.
Oh.
But for the Egungun ones, and for the Gelede, but I noticed it more with Egungun, you would have people sitting on motorcycles getting invested. You'd have people filming with their smartphones.
That was cool to see.
Even though, like, we're in the age of smartphones, there's still this, no, this is important to us. And even though we know, like, we're connected to the world, we still can enjoy our heritage and our rituals, and because it's still ancestral, it still connects you to the past.
And I actually really liked seeing that, like in one of the videos, there was a kid there with his smartphone, you know, taking video, taking pictures, you know, and then looking at it, and it was a real interesting shift, because when the filming quality of the camera, I was thinking that it was older, but to see it and have that understanding that it is modern, that it is happening still, I liked that, because even in the face of what those cultures have been through,
Yes.
like, they are still holding on to the important aspects of their heritage and have carried it forward. And one thing that I liked about that is seeing that kid take the pictures, and I'm like, how wild would that be to just be there and be sharing that with the world? Like, this is going on now. This isn't an ancient ceremony. Like, this is our ceremony. This is something that we are doing now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, and that's why I was trying to be very careful when discussing these rituals, to keep it in the present, because it is the present. It's like, yes, these happened, but they also happen. So it's kind of my gripe with whenever I see black and white photographs from, like, the 90s on things, and I'm going, yeah, you're making this momentous thing look older than it is because of the filming that you're doing.
Yeah.
So things like seeing the cell phone made me happy.
Yeah, me too.
And it also made me go, this doesn't delegitimize at all what they're doing. Because I kind of can imagine a little bit of a disconnect. One thing that I guess it can remind me of is how I felt going in when I went to, like, the Sistine Chapel and I was taking photos in there. But I kind of was like, is this okay? Because I don't want people to think that I'm disrespecting a religion that isn't mine. But then I see these people filming their ritual, and it's like, yeah, no, it doesn't invalidate it. You're just sharing your ritual. And
Well, because we, as humans, we connect through sharing.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing that, you're creating something that you can then connect with by sharing it, by
Yes.
showing this image that of something important, by showing this video of something important. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's just another way that we as humans are trying to bridge the gap between one another through sharing.
Yeah. And I will say there are a ton of videos of Egungun masquerades.
I was really surprised.
And
it made me really grateful for YouTube. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll watch a lot of dumb stuff on YouTube, and I'm like, this is actually such an incredible platform that people who would not normally have a platform to share this kind of stuff can. They can upload it,
Yes.
and they can share their culturally relevant and very interesting ceremonies with, my pasty butt sitting over here in the U.S.
yeah. And it was fun too, because like there are videos on YouTube that are like the biggest masquerade this year, and just tall masquerades. And I almost showed you some of those, but then I was going, oh, it is almost 9. I should stick to the ones that I picked.
I like you picked good ones. I was really impressed. So is it I have a hard time with the names. Is it Egungun?
Egungun.
Egun. So the ones that had like the costumes with moving parts on the headpieces.
Those were Gelede.
Gelede. Okay, I was getting Egungun is just the long flowing multi-cloth pieces.
Yes.
That the elders would wear when they
For
do
the
these ceremonies.
ancestors.
For the ancestors. The Gelede, the Gelede ones that we saw as well. So those were more relevant to the person wearing it, right? Like what they want or what they want to ward off.
Yeah, a bit, because that one is the one where it was based off of the story of Yamoja's kids doing the ritual after Yamoja had done the ritual so that they could have children. And so it turned into this honoring women and also making sure that women or witches wouldn't be angry with you depending on where you're performing it. And the masks would symbolize either the messengers, or it would symbolize something that you shouldn't do, or something that you want. The masks all were just very different, except for the mask at midnight. Because the mask at midnight is always the son, Efe, the boy. And then during the day, it's the different types of masks, and that one felt more performance-y than the Egungun did. Like, more like a structured performance.
Is that the one that you were saying that only the elders get to watch?
Well, the elders get to watch the Efe, but like both the Efe and Gelede dances are more performance-based than the Egungun one, where you saw the Egungun literally walking with people and dancing around.
Had a crowd around him, and he would just kind of like peel off and then go over and like bless somebody, and then it was much more. Watching that one, I got the feeling that it was much more of in the sense of what was going on, that the Egungun was letting the spirits guide him, kind of thing. Like because there wasn't structure to that one. It was more free flow, and then it was like he would veer off and, okay, you get a blessing, then okay, and then veer over here, and then this person gets a blessing. So it was almost like he was trying to channel the ancestors, who needs a blessing kind of thing.
And you, with the Egungun, you still get a little bit of the flair of whoever is performing as the Egungun.
Absolutely.
It's not like with the substitution ceremony with the girl and the goat. It is still like this person is performing as this being, whereas with with the Gelede, that one, they're still doing that sort of thing, but it's definitely more scripted almost, it felt like, or choreographed.
Yes, definitely choreographed, because they tend to be closer to each other, like in these lines, and they tend to not like venture, because people were like sitting in rows. Like, people were, like, sitting down to watch. It wasn't a let's walk with the Egungun as it traverses the village, you know, the town. The Gelede one was much more of a, okay, get your chair, let's park here and sit and let's watch.
Yes. And the Gelede, like, they would interact with the audience. Like, at one point, one that I want to say it was supposed to be a hyena. Maybe. Either a hyena or some other carnivorous animal that picked up the little boy and had his mouth moving. And
yeah. Like it was snatching the kid. Yeah.
Yes. And so with the Gelede costumes, they have a face or a head that it's not just flowing fabric that comes down, and the costumes are more meant to look feminine. So
yeah, because that was the whole thing that you were talking about, where the women would make the masks and the men would wear them. Mm-hmm. Except we did see, I think that might have changed.
Women were still sewing the costumes, but men were carving the
headpieces. But that was the one I was talking about, where it had, like, some of them they had moving parts. Like the hyena one you're talking about had a mouth that opened. There was, you know, a costume that had, like, a man on top that it looked like he had a wallet. Yes. And there were, like, pulling parts that would, like, come up, different money bills would come up. So I don't know if that one was saying, hey, I would like more money, or if it was saying don't be greedy, like, or what the meaning was behind that particular costume and that particular dancer. And then there was one that was like a motorcycle driving back and forth on the head. Cool. Like, and then was it two men who were, like, lifting a coffin or something? Yeah. So it's like it was, I was watching those costumes, sitting here, like, watching the movement of the person, like, okay, that has to be tension based, using pulley systems. I'm, like, watching their movements to see how they're activating it, you know, and I really couldn't tell. So it's like the engineering behind the costumes is really impressive as well. That they have these moving parts.
It's puppetry. It's so
puppetry.
Cool.
Yeah, puppetry incorporated with the costumes. And beautiful, like, really colorful too. Like, I was just really impressed with a lot of it. Yeah.
So you're seeing the bedrock now of theater with those two performances, and that's, again, next year you're going to see some different ones. You'll see, I think I'm going to have you watch the Don performance. I think it's Don and not Dan. It's spelled Dan, but I think it's pronounced Don. Because I cannot find the Ashanti ones, but I'm gonna keep searching. But I at least found my ones for the Don. But yeah, you just get this nice little bedrock of where some of these things come from, and I pointed it out to you, but there were some dance steps that looked kind of familiar with the Gelede.
Yeah, am I allowed to talk about that?
A little bit, yeah. You can talk a little bit of what it looked like to you.
It looked like tap dancing.
Yes.
Because it was a lot of very fast, tapping of, like, the ground. Like, as they would walk, there'd be a lot of, like, quick kicking, and it looked a lot like tap dancing.
And we will actually be talking about the father of tap dancing tomorw, or whenever episode 2 releases, I guess, not necessarily tomorrow.
But you know I'm a sucker for tap dance.
Yes, so I mean, I'm a little sorry for what the full origin story is going to be for that, but it's also gonna be a mixed bag, to borrow a phrase from one of our favorite podcasts. It's complicated.
It's complicated.
So, yeah, is there anything else that you would like to say about the Gelede or the Egungun, or...
Which one was the twerking?
That was the Egungun. Those were the women that were singing the songs to talk about the ancestors and stuff.
Okay, because I don't remember seeing them, like, accompanying the people in the costumes, because they were stationary and they had drummers behind them, and then they were shaking their groove things.
Yes, and singing about This guy can't be a king. He's too short. And
Oh, that made me laugh a bit because I was like, as a shorter man, I was like, hey, now, it's not my fault.
So that's a little bit of the performance side of the Egungun, is that there are skits that sometimes go with it. And like one of the Egungun that we saw, it was a more typical Egungun where they had the piles of cloth, and then there was one that was meant to look a little bit more feminine of an Egungun that was dancing, that kind of was the harlot type character.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's amazing, and I'm so glad that we are able to see that.
And I did notice the masks on the Egungun did vary quite a bit, because the first one we saw, it had what looked like almost like a tiny head on top.
Yes.
And then one of the other ones we saw had a much more elaborate mask. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting because the Gelede. The Gelede, while they were all different, met almost a more uniform criteria. Mm-hmm. And I guess the same could be said for the Egungun as well. But I was just the varying mask type seemed to be much different for the Egungun, and it's a little bit of I don't want to say culture shock, but a little overwhelming culturally, because I've never seen this before, and I was just like absorbing it and trying to process it as I was absorbing it and trying to kind of like make sense of it, because it's wildly different than anything I'm familiar with.
Yes.
But it is incredibly intriguing.
Yes. So it honestly, it made me sit here and go, I want to get my passport together to go back to the motherland, because yeah. So yeah, for me, it gives me this. It's that same looking back thing that I was talking about with Ron Hartfield, where he was talking about, our experience is always looking back, and this was one of those things that kind of filled that for me a little bit, to be able to see that. So it's great that you can watch this on YouTube for free. Mm-hmm. You can see this.
That people are putting it out there to share it.
Yes. And so even if I can't go across the ocean, I still can feel like I'm there a little bit. And it's great. It's wonderful. The internet is a wonderful thing sometimes. So, let's prepare you for what we're going to talk about next. We'll talk about it for the next episode. We can't really talk about Black theater without talking about slavery, racism, everything that you're dealing with, and all of the hardships. So, next episode, we're going to be covering minstrel shows, which we've talked about in our episodes proper, but not in great detail, and how that was kind of the only outlet for Black actors for a long time. We're going to talk about Tom shows a little bit, the Uncle Tom shows, which were very popular, and we'll talk about William Henry Lane, who was the father of tap dance and was a Black man who got his start with minstrel shows and ended up creating tap dance, jazz dance, bunch of dance forms, basically sprung from his routine that he did. And then we will close out talking about Little Africa and the African Grove Theater, which was the first Black theater in America.
Oh, cool.
But before we can get to that, we have to kind of go through the heavy stuff. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel there. And then episode 3, you'll get your first 1K play.
I'm excited.
So, for those of you listening, thank you so much. We hope that you enjoy this series that we're doing. Again, this is going to be a annual thing. I'm really excited to do it, and especially because there are more plays being created now by Black playwrights. So I'm excited because we will just have material forever, and it makes me happy.
And if you'd like to follow Kay and I, you can check out our home base at tonedeafmusical.com. We have links to all of our social media, as well as the Cast Junkie Discord server. We have a channel over there if you'd like to stop in and say hi.
Yep. Just a heads up, that channel is... It would be better if you're 18 or older, just because there is swearing in that channel, so don't go on that channel without parent permission or parent supervision if you're under 18, because, yeah. Just a warning there.
Warren is behaving for these.
Warren is behaving for these episodes, but normally this show is not necessarily kid-friendly, so there's our disclaimer again for all of you. So that'll be it for today. Next episode will be a little bit heavier, but I promise things will get better.
Okay, I trust you.
I'm glad. I'm glad that you trust me. Mwahaha.
I regret.
That'll be it for today. I'm Kay.
I'm Warren.
And this has been Tone Deaf.